On today's show, for the fifth time in 10 years, the Houston Rockets season comes to an end at the hands of the Golden State Warriors. Who showed up in Game 7? Who didn't? What went wrong? And where do the Rockets go from here? It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You know, this wouldn't hurt nearly as bad if it wasn't that team. It had to be that team. Man. What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, while also liking, commenting, and subscribing on YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym, after a, yet again, heartbreaking Game 7 loss to the Golden State Warriors. Oh, man. 103-89, the final score from Game 7. And man, this is a tough one. This one's going to sting for a while. All the emotion, all the buildup to Game 7, to go down 3-1 and to fight your way back into the series and give yourself a chance on your own home court to close things out and move on to the next round. And then to fall apart the way that they did in Game 7 is pretty brutal. To see how things transpired. And we're going to get into kind of what went wrong here in Game 7, who showed up, who didn't, and some of the big questions facing this Rockets team this offseason and the direction that this team is headed. But just looking at the game, you know, this was a game where the Rockets felt like they kind of reverted back to some of their tendencies from earlier in the series. Felt like Ime struggled and got outmaneuvered by Steve Kerr in this game. The double big lineup suffered with the Warriors 5-out spacing, and Buddy Hield was unconscious. And as per usual, Steph Curry, who only had 3 points at halftime in this game, was getting carried by his teammates. Rockets trailed 51-39 at halftime, and it was a rough offensive game all around. It was a rough offensive game, but the Rockets were able to kind of claw their way back in that third quarter. Spearheaded by Amen Thompson, really trying to take over the game. Not even trying. He did take over the game for a stretch there. And Alperen and Şengün, those two guys showed up in a big way in the third quarter, kind of sparking the Rockets' comeback. And they got it within 3. Rockets got it within 3 late in that third quarter. Pardon me. Throat's all messed up. Rockets got it within 3 late in that third quarter off a Jabari Smith Jr. 3. And then the Warriors closed the quarter on a 7-2 run, took an 8-point lead into the fourth quarter. And then Steph Curry did Steph Curry things at the top of the fourth quarter, had a quick layup, hit a 3-pointer on a play where Amen Thompson's calf basically died. He was cramping up after a fall on the other end. And, you know, Amen Thompson was playing out of his mind. And that moment, that play where Amen Thompson basically died trying to guard Steph Curry, gave Steph a wide open step back 3 and put the Rockets down 15. And that was really hard to try and fight back from. And they tried in this game. They fought hard, and they just weren't able to get enough going. Offensively, they just did not have it in this game. They missed so many shots in the paint, something like 30 misses inside the painted area, only attempted 18 three-pointers. That's absurd. To put that in perspective, Jalen Green by himself attempted 18 three-pointers in game 2 of this series, and the Rockets as a collective team only attempted 18 threes here in game 7, 6 of 18. So not even a terrible shooting percentage from 3. They just didn't get enough of them up. They failed to convert on the looks that they had inside the paint. They didn't get enough threes up. They actually did take care of business at the free throw line, 15 of 21 shooting there. They out-rebounded the Warriors. But so much of this boiled down to the Warriors' adjustments with their 5-out spacing to counter the size of the Rockets. And also the sneaky subtraction for the Warriors of losing Gary Payton II. Gary Payton II had by far been the worst player in this series for the Warriors, and they lost him due to food poisoning. The second time a Warriors player this series had been impacted by food poisoning. So I don't know what they're feeding the Warriors, but I don't know. It's weird to have that happen not once, but twice in a single series. And GP2 was killing him when he was on the floor. He wasn't providing much, if anything, offensively, and he really wasn't as effective as a defensive disruptor on the other end of the floor. The Warriors were effectively able to take Jalen Green out of the series regardless of who was guarding him. And when they did stick GP2 on Fred VanVleet still cooked him in game 6. So the Warriors losing GP2 was actually a good thing for them, surprisingly. It forced them to lean more into the Buddy Hield, Brandon Pajemski minutes, and Buddy Hield gave them so much in this game. 33 points, 9 of 11 shooting from downtown. This is Rockets fans 9-11. Literally the Buddy Hield 9-11 game. Can't even. Just unbelievable, man. And it sucks because this team really fought so hard in this series, and it very much felt like at various points the Rockets shot themselves in the foot more often than the Warriors did things to outmaneuver the Rockets. You know, not here in game 7. In game 7, credit to the Warriors. Their defense was phenomenal. Draymond Green made life hell for everybody. They were flying around the perimeter, limiting those perimeter looks. Again, Rockets only getting 18 threes. They're just scared to shoot at times. Warriors defense was phenomenal here in game 7, and they did enough offensively to be able to pull out the win on the road in a tough environment. Not the first time they've done it. And you just got to tip your cap at that point. The better team won in game 7. Not going to say that the better team won the series. But this is what youth looks like. This is what a young team playing playoff basketball for their first time looks like. And as amazing as it would have been, as awesome of a storybook ending as it would have been to be able to finally get that monkey off their back and beat the Warriors and advance to the next round, regardless of what would have happened, you know, from that point on for the Rockets season, this was an invaluable learning experience for all the young guys up and down the Rockets roster. And this is important. This series was important for Ime Udoka and the coaching staff, for Rafael Stone in the front office, for the Fertittas and the ownership group to be able to look at and evaluate this team and decide on the next steps and where this organization is headed and what decisions they need to ultimately make this offseason, because there are a lot of big questions facing this Rockets team this offseason. Coming up, I do want to talk about some of those big questions facing this team. I also want to get into kind of who showed up and who didn't in this game and some of the narratives that I'm seeing flying around after the game 7 loss. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Rockets fans, you're gonna want to pay attention to this sponsor. Look, the world has made a lot of progress when it comes to mental health, but there's still a long way to go. Too many people still avoid therapy because they're afraid of being judged. But the truth is, taking care of your mental health should be just as normal as going to the gym or eating healthy. This Mental Health Awareness Month, let's normalize getting help and encourage everyone to prioritize their well-being. Because when people feel supported, families, workplaces, and entire communities are better for it. Look, I've done therapy in the past. I found it to be an incredibly cathartic experience to have an unbiased, professional third party kind of help walk me through some of the stuff that I was dealing with in my day-to-day life. It could be stress with your partner. It could be stuff going on at work, you're with your friends and family, or maybe you're just, down bad after a Game 7 loss to the Golden State Warriors. Whatever it is, we're all better with help. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's take a look at, because, this game is tough because, it very much felt like the Rockets kind of, even though the Warriors were the older, more veteran team, and they certainly looked wiped out, exhausted, whatever, after Game 6. And it felt like, and I had all the confidence in the world, and it felt like the Rockets had the momentum wrestled back, and the momentum was in their favor in this series going into Game 7. It kind of felt like the Rockets maybe punched themselves out of it after the effort expended in Games 5 and 6 to even the series. And that's where you go back and you think, man, if you just hadn't fumbled Game 1, or if you've been able to take care of business in Game 4, knocking down free throws in either Games 3 or 4, like so many little things that could have gone either way in this series. And unfortunately, the stuff that was stacked against the Rockets, the self-inflicted mistakes earlier in the series, is what put the Warriors up 3-1 and put the Rockets in this position where they had to play a Game 7 at home, and where they had already kind of given the Warriors their best shot in Games 5 and 6. Fred VanVleet emptying the clip 3 straight games in a row and just didn't have it again in Game 7. And not even to say Fred was bad in Game 7. It's just Warriors defense was sensational. He played 44 minutes, led the team in minutes played. He had 17 points, 6 of 13 shooting. He was 3 of 6 from downtown, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 3 turnovers. Fred tried. Fred showed up. He did. But Fred also isn't supposed to be the guy. He's not supposed to be the leading scorer of the team. It was never supposed to be Fred's role. And looking at how the Warriors really hurt the Rockets in this game, right? The 5-out spacing killed them. They were Rockets, again, it felt like Ime Udoka got kind of outmaneuvered in this game. The double big lineup was not as effective in this one. And at least it certainly didn't feel as effective in this one. The Rockets felt like they played better with just one big on the floor for stretches. And because of the Warriors' 5-out spacing, and Buddy Hield going off, that was tough. And it kind of felt like the Rockets reverted offensively back to kind of that Game 1 plan of just dump the ball down to Şengün, hunt for a mismatch, waste a bunch of time on the clock looking for the mismatch, and then just give the ball to Şengün and let him try to go to work. And, Alpe struggled at points in this game, right? He missed a lot of easy shots. He did. He missed a lot of shots close around the basket. And later in the game, he started settling. He started, there were a couple possessions where he had Draymond Green, tried to back him down, couldn't do it, and then just settled for a turnaround fadeaway. And I think of the 2 turnaround fadeaways that he took over Draymond Green specifically, I don't think he drew iron on either one. It's tough. But, walking away from this game, there are guys that showed up in this game and there are guys that didn't show up. Amen Thompson absolutely showed up. Amen Thompson showed up and showed why he's a franchise cornerstone and showed why he's untouchable. He realized in that third quarter that he could put his fingerprints all over this game, and he has been throughout this series, right? After a rough first few games of the series, kind of started to figure things out in game 4, and he's been phenomenal since that point, since game 4. Incredible defense on Steph Curry, and then, just his stat line, 24 points, led the team in scoring, 9 of 16 shooting, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block, no turnovers, 6 of 6 at the free throw line, started getting downhill and just playing bully ball, dropping shoulders into guys, finishing at the rim. The incredibly tight defense on Steph Curry. Steph Curry scored more points in the 4-ish minutes that Amin Thompson had to leave the game with the cramps, the whatever, than he did the rest of the outing. That's how good Amin Thompson was limiting Steph Curry in this game. And so all it took was that one gap, that one stretch for Amin Thompson to be out of the game, for Steph Curry to get going and to create the separation and put the Warriors ahead. Amin Thompson showed up. He did. And that third quarter with Amin Thompson and Alperen Şengün trying to put the team on their back and willing them back into the game was nothing short of miraculous, because the Rockets felt like they were dead in the water, down 12 at halftime, and Steph Curry hadn't even shown up yet. And I was like, I've seen this story before. Steph Curry, 0 points at halftime, goes off in the second half. And this time around, Steph Curry, 3 points at halftime, 19 in the second half. This wasn't quite the statistical anomaly of going 0 for 27, but I don't know if this loss is worse or better or whatever. Maybe I'm just numb to it at this point. I'm just kind of trying to navigate my emotions around this. Amin Thompson showed up. He's untouchable. The Rockets know he's untouchable. He's a franchise cornerstone. And I said this after the game and received a solid amount of pushback about it, but Alperen Şengün absolutely showed up. And you can be frustrated with Şengün, and the missed shots that he had in this game. You can be frustrated with the moments where he was settling for the turnaround fadeaways, whatever. 21 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, a block, 3 turnovers. 21 points on 23 shots is not great. It's not. But to say that he didn't show up is just asinine. It is. It's ridiculous. If you watched that game and you're telling me Alperen Şengün didn't show up, you need to get, where's my Ime quote? Where's my Udoka? I know it's here. Oh my God, there it is.
Get some glasses, open your eyes.
There you go. I had to find the line. Because here's the rub, right? Nobody on this team is asked to do more than Alperen Şengün. Nobody. Not a single player on the roster. Maybe Amin Thompson. Not even Amin Thompson, because his offensive responsibilities aren't as big as Alperen Şengün's. And Amin Thompson is starting to figure it out, right? You saw it there in the third quarter. Kind of that stretch in the third quarter where Amin Thompson started to take over the game kind of felt like where Neo finally realized that he was the one and understood how to do what he could do. And so that was a kind of a special moment watching Amin. Dude, the driving, split the defender behind the back, goes up with the offhand on the other side of the basket layup that he had was just one of the most acrobatic, insane plays that I've ever seen a player make in real time. Just absurd stuff. But back to Şengün. Nobody on this Rockets roster does as much as Alperen Şengün, or is asked to do as much as Alperen Şengün on both sides of the floor. Defensively, Şengün is a big out there having to run around and chase smaller players, guards, switching, chasing guys, closing out. The zone defense that the Rockets have been running with Steven Adams only works because of Alperen Şengün and how effective he's been defensively. He's out there crushing the glass, getting all these rebounds. He's facilitating, led the team in assists, still playing stellar defense. And then here's the rub. Offensively, Rockets did the whole hunting mismatches thing and tried to get him on smaller players so that he could take advantage of them. But he's been banging with Draymond Green for an entire 7-game series. The dude is getting fouled constantly with no whistles, 2 hands on his back, shoved, pushed, hit, all of that. And the refs absolutely swallowed their whistles for most of Game 7. It was a far cry from the amount of contact that the Rockets were getting, the fouls that they were generating, the free throws that they were getting in Game 6 compared to Game 7. Refs were letting so much contact go. And I'm not saying this to make excuses for the guy. He needs to be better offensively. And he said as much post-game. He said, this year I really focused on my defense, and I felt like my offense wasn't as good, right? And it wasn't. His offense slipped this season. His touch around the basket fell. His percentages, his TS was in the tank. And that's all understandable. But you know why the Rockets kept going to Alp? Because literally nobody else could do anything. It's that simple. Jalen Green, big no-show, 6 out of 7 games. That's why they had to keep hammering the ball into Alp. Fred didn't have another heater in the bag. He didn't. Fred didn't have another one of those games 4, 5, or 6. He didn't have one ready for Game 7. And again, Warriors defense did a much better job keeping him bottled up. Amen Thompson started to kind of figure it out as the game went on, but the Rockets have never built their offensive game plan around Amen Thompson getting downhill and attacking. He just kind of took the game into his own hands and started doing things and trying to make something happen. The Rockets' game plan was to give Şengün the ball and try to let him go to work because that was their only option. And that's a failing of the coaching staff. It's a failing of his teammates that nobody else outside of Amen Thompson and to a lesser degree Fred VanVleet was able to show up offensively. So I have no idea how Rockets fans could watch that game. The guy who dominated for most of a 7-game series. Also, keep in mind, his first playoff appearance too. Everybody wants to run up and down and make excuses for Jalen Green and his potential and his talent and all this stuff, but then doesn't want to extend the same grace to Alperen Şengün, who is literally was for a majority of the series being guarded by one of the greatest defenders of all time in Draymond Green. Like, what game are you? What if you are sitting there thinking that Alperen Şengün didn't show up in the series? What game are you watching? Even in the Game 7, even where he struggled in Game 7, throw out the rest of the series. Even in Game 7, he absolutely showed up. Did he struggle? Absolutely. Was it a perfect game? No. Did he show up? Yes. He tried. He fought. He played with heart, and he tried, man. He tried. He was gassed by the end of it all. He was gassed, and he started settling, sure, but where else were the Rockets even going to attempt to get offense? Jalen Green? That wasn't going to happen. So, yeah. Amen Thompson showed up. Şengün showed up. Fred did his job. Dillon Brooks was a train wreck in back-to-back games. Got benched in Game 6. Really struggled in Game 7. And Dillon Brooks was a big reason why Buddy Hield was cooking the Rockets in this game. Dillon Brooks was giving Buddy Hield way too much space on the perimeter. A lot of Buddy Hield's threes were just flat out wide open threes because Dillon was sagging off too far, looking to help elsewhere. And there were 2 guys that the Rockets had to pay incredibly close attention to on the perimeter, and that was Buddy Hield and Steph Curry. And they did a good enough job bottling up Steph for most of the game. 22 points on 16 shots. Not a phenomenal night for Steph. That's pretty pedestrian by his standards. But to give up 33 to Buddy Hield, to get bounced by Buddy Hield in Game 7 sucks. And so Dillon struggled. And then Jalen wanted to see something. Wanted him to show me anything here in Game 7. And he just didn't. And the whole notion of, the Warriors took him out of the series and this, that, and the other thing, like, they weren't doubling him. They weren't blitzing him. They weren't doing anywhere near the same level of stuff that they were doing earlier in the series. And no ability to make an impact on the game. Just nothing from Jalen. It's very disappointing. Very disappointing outcome. Very disappointing first playoff series for him. And the fan base is fully turning on Jalen Green at this point. Like seeing Rockets fans reacting to the series, reacting to Jalen Green's performance. And it's not undeserved. This was Amin Thompson's first playoffs too. And he struggled for the first part of the series, and then he figured it out and started being incredibly impactful. This was Alperen Şengün's first playoffs. And he was phenomenal for most of the series. He struggled in game, I forget if it was 3 or 4, game 3. And then in game 7, right, being worn out by the end of a series for everything that he's responsible for this team on both sides of the floor, he was just gassed by the end of it. But he showed up, and it was his first playoff series too. Even Jabari struggled on this one, just 3 points, 1 of 5 shooting. Tari struggled. The entire bench unit kind of struggled for the Rockets in this game, unfortunately, but it's just tough, and this Rockets team they've got something figured out with the defense and how they were able to get to the 2 seed and win 52 wins. But you cannot make the same mistake that the Sacramento Kings did a couple years ago and run this exact team back the next season. You can't. Complacency is a killer. And you can't just be complacent about this team. And I don't know how anybody looks at the performance of this team, not even just throughout the 7-game series, but also throughout the regular season and all the problems and all the issues that plagued this team offensively for so much of the regular season. I don't know how anybody can look at that product and think, you know what? Yeah, let's run it back one more time. No major changes. That would be a mistake. And that plays into a lot of the big questions facing this Houston Rockets team this offseason. I want to talk about some of that coming up here in just a moment, kind of where this team is headed. What are the next steps for this team? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment costs, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food. It was an embarrassing amount of like dining out and food delivery and all sorts of stuff. Now I budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, look. I've been kind of down bad for the first couple segments, and I'm going to try and like perk up a little bit here as the pod is ending. So sorry about that for being a Debbie Downer, but this just sucks. It does. It sucks. But the way that this ended, the game 7 loss, going toe to toe with the Warriors, right? The final pieces of this Warriors dynasty with Steph and Dre and Steve Kerr and Jimmy Butler added to the mix. Like, again, you couldn't have asked for better experience for these young guys. And it does not, and I want to make sure to reiterate this, it does not take away from what they accomplished this season, right? To go from missing the playoffs entirely last year, just barely, mind you, right? 41-41, to becoming the 2 seed in the Western Conference, earning home court advantage, drawing an incredibly tough opponent in the first round, going down 3-1, and then showing the resiliency and the resolve to fight and claw your way back to give yourself a chance in game 7. This Rockets team deserves so much praise and love for just adoration for what they accomplished this year. They accomplished more than anybody thought that they would accomplish this season. That's just facts, right? Nobody thought that this Rockets team would be one of the best teams in the NBA. Nobody thought this Rockets team would be a home court advantage team in the first round. Nobody would have thought that this Rockets, even after the first round was set, everybody picked Warriors in 6. Every national analyst, every pundit, everybody had Warriors in 6. And the Rockets still, despite kind of shooting themselves in the foot at times, still managed to force a game 7 and give themselves a fighting chance and a shot, a 50-50 coin flip, right, to move on to the next round. And this experience is going to go such a long way for the guys up and down the roster to be able to learn from, to grow from, to come back even stronger next season and understand, now, okay, we know what playoff basketball is like. We know what the intensity is like. We know how we can be better this next time around. But now it's going to be up to the Rockets coaching staff, the Rockets front office to adjust the roster accordingly, to look at the data points and make some pretty big decisions about what they're ultimately going to do. There is a laundry list of things that the Rockets have to do this offseason. Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason are both up for rookie scale contract extensions, and that'll probably be something that, similar to Jalen Green and Alperen and Şengün, will probably drag out all offseason and maybe all the way up until the start of next regular season, just like Jalen Green and Şengün did. Although, because those guys are not necessarily your star players, maybe it's easier to facilitate those contracts and they'll happen sooner rather than later. So we'll see what happens there. Fred VanVleet with his team option on his contract. And the funny thing is, most of these team options, the trigger date is usually the end of June. Fred VanVleet's contract stipulates that the Rockets have to make a decision 5 days after his final postseason game. So we're going to know by Friday or Saturday. I don't know the specific timing on it, but by Friday or Saturday, we're going to know whether or not the Houston Rockets have declined or picked up Fred VanVleet's team option and what that means for him and for the organization moving forward. And it's worth noting that after the game, Ime Udoka was asked about, Fred's contract and whether they want him here or whether they want him back. And he said, basically he was like, yeah, we want him here. Right. And we like him and we'd love to have him here. And so it's kind of coach speak. And, Fred commented on it as well, but Fred was like, I'm not going to discuss the contract stuff, but basically saying, paraphrasing, that, when Fred was originally signed here, it wasn't under the guise of some short-term thing. It was with a long-term vision, and that they're right on track and that they're actually ahead of schedule of kind of where they expected the team to be at this point. Or maybe he said right on schedule, but either way, Fred being in Houston long-term would not be a bad thing, and it would certainly probably be a good thing, but it's just dependent on whether or not it revolves around them picking up the option on that contract or declining the option and re-signing him to a friendlier average annual value kind of deal. Steven Adams is an unrestricted free agent. They got to figure his situation out. Adams has been invaluable to this Rockets team, and based on the contract that he's making right now and the teams that are likely to want to pursue him in free agency, the Rockets are probably going to have to spend a little bit more than the MLE to be able to retain him. But I think keeping Steven Adams has to be an absolute top priority for this team moving forward. Jae'Sean Tate, unrestricted free agent. Jeff Green, unrestricted free agent. Are these guys that you want to bring back, parts of the stay ready crew? Do you bring them back on more kind of team-friendly contracts, especially with the extensions for Jalen Green and Alperen and Şengün kicking in this offseason? Or do you sign them to, kind of more mid-sized kind of contracts to be able to have some tradable salary to be able to use down the line, to be able to make moves to improve the roster? So we'll see what happens with those guys. Rockets pick is currently sitting at number 9 in the NBA draft lottery, and the drawing is exactly a week from today. By the time you're listening to this, if you're listening on Monday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, then the draft lottery will be May 12th. And so we'll find out whether or not that pick jumps up, stays in place, slides back a little bit, all that good stuff. And so that's going to have some serious ramifications for what the Rockets are able to do in this draft. Do the Rockets maybe come out of this and win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes? Like, that'd be kind of crazy. In fact, I get, what we should for funsies, we should do a tankathon spin just because I'm right here. Might as well. All right, let's do a tankathon spin really quick. Sim lottery. And nothing. It fell to 10. Okay, well, I tried. My bad, guys. All right, so draft lottery and what happens with that pick. That's going to be a big one. Rockets have their non-taxpayer MLE available in free agency to potentially add an impact player, maybe add another rotation piece. There's a lot of potential trades on the horizon, a lot of smoke surrounding Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo. We'll see what happens, and if the Rockets decide to make a push for a star level player. And literally, easily the biggest question facing this Rockets team is what happens with Jalen Green? Because I don't think you can come back next season. And I maybe I jumped the gun a little early in after the game 4 because I was crashing out kind of hard after game 4, saying that the Jalen Green experiment should be over, but I don't know. I don't know how you look at this series and think anything else other than, things have to be different. They do. And maybe the Jalen Green experiment doesn't necessarily need to be over, but I don't think you can come back into next season with Jalen as in the role that he's occupying right now. You can't come in expecting Jalen Green to be your leading scorer, to be your lead guard, to be your dynamic perimeter creator, your primary ball handler, and the main complement to Alperen Şengün in the 2-man game. And that's something that I should have mentioned there when I was talking about Şengün in segment 2, right? Şengün is not best served as your number one option, your go-to guy, dump the ball into him and let the post and let him go to work. That's not his best role. His best role is as a secondary or tertiary option and really leveraging his playmaking and his facilitating and his gravity as a playmaker. And in order to do that, you need to pair him with somebody who can score. You need to pair him with a dynamic guard. How many times, if you are an everydayer, which shout out to, I should have done this earlier in the episode, but shout out to Hani, Zion, a couple friends at AliCon. Shout out to you guys, and shout out to my guy Connor, who I saw at Game 7. Sorry that we didn't get the win, guys. But if you're an everydayer, I've said it all season long, right? The recipe for success for the Rockets is one of Fred or Jalen has to show up offensively. You pair that with Şengün's work in the middle, and that's what makes the Rockets dynamic, right? That's should be the bread and butter for this Rockets offense, is the 2-man game between a dynamic perimeter player and then Şengün in the middle. Expecting Şengün to be your number one option that's gonna result in failure more often than not. And that's not an indictment on Şengün. That's just not his archetype of player. That's not what makes him special on the basketball floor. If Şengün can give you 20, 10, and 5 on a nightly basis, but if you've got a guard that can put up ideally a solid 20 to 25 on hopefully decent efficiency, and then those two guys play off of each other to make life easier for one another instead of the defense being able to constantly load up on Şengün or the defense constantly loading up on said guard, that's the beauty of what Şengün's game provides to this Rockets team. And so they need to figure out the Jalen Green thing. Maybe they move him to the bench. Maybe they trade him. But if this Rockets team comes back next season and Jalen Green is still the starting 2 guard for this team, brace yourself for disappointment. Because I do not see a world where things are going to suddenly magically change overnight. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence, and it isn't just this series. It's not just Game 7. It's not any of it. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that through 4 years now, and again, you can even throw out the first 2 years of the Silas era, that Jalen Green is not it. He is not the guy. He's not him. And he shrank. In the biggest moment of his career, he shrank and was invisible. And that's not the guy you want as your franchise cornerstone. That's not the guy you build a team around. That's not the guy you make roster decisions around. It's not. The guys you make roster decisions around and build a team around are the Amin Thompsons and the Alperen Şengüns, not the Jalen Greens. It's that simple. And hopefully the Rockets front office can realize that, can accept that they missed with the number 2 overall pick, and that they can reevaluate and assess and make the proper decisions going forward to give this team the best chance to compete next season. That's all I've got on this one. I will say, with another season coming to an end, I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, for listening, for all the everydayers, whether you're Houston-based, Texas-based, United States-based, all around the globe. You know, this Rockets fandom and Rockets fans are the best in the business. They're passionate. You guys care so much about this team and the players and what's going on. And this show wouldn't be what it is without you guys, without the Hounds, without everything that makes this show special. So with another season coming to an end of me doing this show, I just want to say thank you for the support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we've got a mountain of off-season content coming your way. So don't worry. The train doesn't stop just because the season's over. There's going to be no shortage of different things to talk about this off-season. And I look forward to being with you guys every step of the way as the Rockets navigate what comes next for them organizationally. With that, appreciate you for tuning in. Give me your thoughts on the end of the season. Give me your thoughts on Game 7. Give me your thoughts on Jalen Green in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.